Breaking down trade candidates for the Timberwolves. Help in the backcourt is what the Wolves need. Let's go through a few names of guys the Wolves could and should target next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy Timberwolves game day. The Wolves take on the Utah Jazz tonight. We'll preview that game a little bit later in the show. We'll also talk about all-star voting and Ant being snubbed as a starter a little bit later. It was a fan vote that did him in, so I don't want to harp on it too much. I think everybody knows he's one of the best 5 players in the Western Conference, and it's a popularity contest. We'll talk about that a little bit later. What cost him the spot? Was it Victor Wembanyama? Was it Denny Avdia? We'll kind of break that down a little bit later. But I want to start with trade candidates. We're just a little over 2 weeks away from the trade deadline, and there's been a few names kind of bandied about as potential Timberwolves trade targets. We'll talk about those. That, guys we've referenced before, the Kobe Whites of the world, et cetera. We'll mention some of the other names, but some deeper cuts, some guys who might be minor improvements, some guys that, could be options, except for they might need an extension, and guys that are almost but not quite perfect fits. I'll give you my favorite trade targets and then some fringe guys to keep an eye out for, just based on salary and role and position and all that stuff. So we'll do that here for the first part of the show. We'll get into the All-Star stuff and then preview the Wolves-Jazz matchup in a little bit. Big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. All right. Trade deadline, 2 weeks from Thursday. It's getting down to it. There's a lot of stuff here that could go down in the next couple of weeks. The Wolves have obviously overall, despite the 2 losses over the weekend, to the Rockets and the Spurs, shorthanded in both games and both really good opponents. Like, those games notwithstanding, the Wolves have been on a really impressive run here lately. And I don't think there's any real appetite for a major shakeup. So I'm not going to talk about the LaMelo Balls or the James Hardens or even the John Morants or, even we'll talk a little Darius Garland, but I don't think the Wolves are likely to make a huge splash like that. I just think it's pretty unlikely given how well they've been playing for the most part here recently. So I want to focus on those mid-level type moves and also some just could they make any move? Could it be a minor, a Monte Morris level move? 2 years ago, the Timberwolves traded for Monte Morris. He was in and out of the rotation down the stretch, ultimately fell out in the playoffs, and Jordan McLaughlin occasionally played over him, but it was still a move the Wolves made to try and shore up their depth, and it did help. They traded guys, who weren't playing, and Troy Brown and Shake Milton at the time. So could there be a move like that, or could it be somewhere between that and a huge swing, like a LaMelo Ball? We'll talk about best fits, contract fits, all that stuff. And again, where the Wolves are is it makes sense to try and improve this roster because this team has a chance. As long as you have Anthony Edwards, this team has a chance to go to the finals. I know the Thunder are, are the giant they have to slay to get there, obviously, but you're not going to not try in Ant's prime, right? You're going to make a swing if it makes sense. That said, the sky isn't falling. There's no need to do something crazy. And there's an ESPN article that came out. Kevin Pelton, who's an analytics guy over at ESPN, talked about, he gave midseason grades to all 30 NBA teams. And that includes the Timberwolves, of course. And the Wolves, he gave a B-. Despite the fact they're outperforming the preseason projection, his preseason projection had him at 49.5 wins, which is right at what the FanDuel over-under was. And I took the over. I thought they'd win 52 to 54 games this year. And Pelton says a 51-win pace obscures concerns for the Timberwolves, who have played the second easiest schedule thus far among the West. Side note, I've been saying that all along. It's why I picked them to be 27-7 on New Year's Day. And they were 4 games, I think, off that pace at the time. Because they had an easy schedule in October, November, December, no back-to-backs in the month of December. I just thought the schedule set up, a lot of home games, set up for them to be really good in the first 40% of the schedule. And now things get more difficult. The last couple weeks have been really hard. They've had back-to-backs every weekend in January. They've got another one upcoming, I think, next week. And lots of tough opponents, right? I mean, they've played since Christmas, they played OKC, they played the Rockets, they played the Spurs like 3 times, or I guess twice since then. It's a tough schedule. And that's a reason to think there could be a little bit of regression, especially given, as Pelton goes on to talk about, they've been relatively healthy. Dillingham and Shannon haven't provided anything, and they haven't backfilled Nickeil Alexander-Walker, even though, and Bones has been fine. And then he says, keep an eye on how injuries could expose the Timberwolves' shaky depth. Well, as of right now, the Wolves are battling through a few minor things, right? Ant missed a few games. Rudy missed Saturday's game on the second night of a back-to-back. I'm sure he probably could have played given another day of rest in there, or if it had been the playoffs, right? It would have been a back-to-back if it was the playoffs, but he could have played. And then Naz goes out with an injury on Saturday. There hasn't been an update from the team as of this recording on Naz Reid, but the Timberwolves did activate Enrique Freeman, or call him up from the G League, which makes me think there's a chance Naz doesn't play on Tuesday. So the depth in the front court right now is actually a little bit of a concern because of that, although Joan Beranger has played great. But the backcourt is the major need. And the reason I bring up Pelton is because he's pointing out, like, even though the Wolves are maybe performing a little better than a lot of people thought they would, there's still issues here that the Wolves need to try and fill. So what do they need? Well, obviously guard depth. They're not really playing a point guard. Like Mike Conley at this point is played 12, 14, 16 minutes a game. Ant is playing a lot of point guard. Dante DiVincenzo's initiating offense. Julius Randle's doing a lot of it. And then there's Bones Highland. They need a playmaker. They need somebody that can initiate offense for the team and also for themselves, to give them another option that can play with Anthony Edwards, but then also run the offense when Ant is on the bench. And the most popular name that's been mentioned over the past month or so is Coby White from the Bulls. And I'm on record as saying I really like Coby White as a player. I think he's great. I think he's a nice scorer. I think there's still some upside there for Coby White. But there's also some concerns. The main one is he's a nice player, but he's a free agent at the end of this year. And while you'd maintain his bird rights and you'd have an advantage and inside track on signing him, are you going to want to pay market value for somebody like Coby White, who is a good scorer, but there's a little bit of emptiness to the numbers he puts up? He's a good shooter. He's not a great shooter. He's got okay size. He doesn't have great size. He's not a very good defender, and he's been hurt a lot over the last year plus, and that's impacted, I think, the defense a little bit. So he'd be a fine player as a rental if you're not giving much up. I think he actually checks a lot of boxes for the Wolves. But I don't know that I want to pay in terms of trade assets for the right to overpay him when it comes time for an extension. So I have Coby White in my category of, like, I'd be okay with them getting Coby White if they're barely giving anything up. And honestly, like, Dillingham and a second-round pick, that's not enough to get Coby White. But, like, if they somehow did that or got a third team involved and they were paying less than market value to trade for Coby White and then don't overpay him on an extension, I'm okay with that for a rental, even this year. I know that that's not great asset management with the Dillingham draft pick, but this team is good. This year's team is good, and Coby White's a good player, and he helps them more than Rob Dillingham. So that's something I'd look at, but I don't want to give, Dillingham and the one pick swap the Wolves can make in a few years, and Shannon and like all this stuff for the right to then extend him for above market value. Like, that's not attractive. That's a name that's been talked about quite a bit. I would also argue, as far as other really good fits, two of his teammates, Ayo Dosunmo and Tre Jones. Of course, Apple Valley's own Tre Jones and brother of also Apple Valley's own and former Timberwolf Tyus Jones. They both would be really nice fits. They're different players. Ayo Dosunmo is actually, the way I would describe Dosunmo is a bit of a Dante DiVincenzo light in terms of what he would bring to the team. He's more of a catch and shoot guy than he is creating off the dribble. He creates a little bit more than Dante does for himself. The assist rate's actually, I think, a little bit lower than DiVincenzo. It's similar, right? Ayo Dosunmo is a similar player to Dante DiVincenzo and what he would provide. And so because of that redundancy, I have a little bit of hesitation there. Like, I don't know what else he's bringing to the table. Now, would he add to the Wolves' depth? If they traded Dillingham for Ayo Dosunmo, would it make this year's team better? Yes. He's shooting 45% from three this year. He's 37% for his career. He was bad last year from three, but he had a limited season due to injury. And 2 years ago, he was 40% as well. So he's over 40% 2 of the last 3 years, 37% for his career from three. And only about 40% of his shots are three-pointers, as opposed to nearly 2/3 of DiVincenzo's shots come from outside the arc. He's having his best overall offensive season this year. And defensively, he's not great. He's not quite as good as DiVincenzo is, but I think he's a better defender than Coby White. He's also a free agent after this year as well. So I don't think you want to overpay to get him. He doesn't fit exactly what the Wolves need, but he's a good player that would raise the Wolves' floor off the bench for sure. So I would actually prefer Dosunmo. He's going to cost less than Coby White, and there's also less of a threat of overpaying him with an extension. Tre Jones, I mean, he's a point guard. He's not a combo guard. He's not a shooting guard. He's a point guard, and he's a really good point guard. He's actually, of the three, he's probably the best player. The question then becomes, is he then your point guard next year if you're Minnesota? Which I like that. Again, it's hard to say what that means in terms of his trade value and what the Wolves would have to trade to give up or to acquire Tre Jones. After this year, he's still got an $8 million on his deal for next season, and then there's a team option for $8 million the year after that. That's not a bad contract. And he's been a starter for them for more than half their games this year. It's probably been the best overall season of his career. Like his brother, the assisted turnover is very impressive. He is, like his brother, he's a Sosa, like he's below average 3-point shooter. He's shooting just 31% on threes so far this season on about an attempt and a half per game. And that's really his career as well. 31% for his career from three on 1.5 per game. But he's a really good passer. And he is a traditional point guard. He's also a pretty good defender, especially given his size. He's just a little bigger than Tyus, not much. I actually don't mind Tre Jones as a target. He then becomes your starting point guard next year if you acquire him. So he may actually cost more because of the contract, and he's about $9 million. So you're looking at Dillingham and maybe Shannon, or throw in somebody else. I don't think they trade bones in a deal like this. You could throw in Joe Ingles, which I don't think they would necessarily do unless they have to. You could make that work. I actually think Tre Jones, while not solving the scoring thing, which becomes a bigger issue if Naz Reid misses any period of time, then you need to find somebody else that can score. Tre Jones solves the Mike Conley minutes. He's better than Mike Conley right now, and it's not particularly close on both ends of the floor. So I like Tre Jones as a trade target from the Bulls. And because the salary is a little bit more, again, it can't just be Dillingham. You're going to have to add something else to that deal. Those are some of my favorite guys. I got one more guy I'd put in that category that would cost a little bit more. And then we'll go through some guys that aren't quite perfect fits, guys that would maybe require an extension, and then some perhaps minor acquisitions if they want to make some improvements around the edges. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your entire team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. Plus, it works right from your phone or computer. You can even keep your existing number, and Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's Quo, QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Big thanks once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen of the day. And of course, thanks for helping to make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you have not already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. You'll get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Wolves, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You also get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server. Includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. I joined the Discord a little over a week ago. It's been fun. There's a few of us on there that have been talking Wolves daily. So jump into the chat on Discord. You go to lockedonwolves.supercast.com to learn more. Again, lockedonwolves.supercast.com, or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right. So in the category of the best fits, Tre Jones, Ayo Dosunmo, and to a lesser extent, because of the ultimate, like, overarching costs, all things considered, Kobe White. I would also put Collin Sexton in that category. Now, I'm not advocating for a massive move for Collin Sexton followed by an extension because he's an expiring contract at almost 19 million. It's like 18.9 million. You'd have to combine, like, you could do it straight up for Dillingham, Shannon, and Conley. Now, would Charlotte do that just to get Dillingham and Shannon? I don't know that they would. They still have LaMelo Ball, obviously. So, Shannon's probably useful to them if they're going to trade LaMelo Ball and they like Dillingham. Like, maybe if Ball moves in another deal or it becomes a 3-team deal, Ball goes somewhere else and Sexton comes to Minnesota. I don't mind Collin Sexton as a fit for the Timberwolves. Like, in a vacuum, I'd take Collin Sexton. I think he checks a lot of boxes. Combo guard, shoots the ball well enough, defends well enough, doesn't like really do anything great, but does everything at a level that would improve the Timberwolves floor. You could put him, you can have him come off the bench. You can move Dante to the bench. It just lifts the floor and the ceiling of this team. I'd be concerned if they thought they were then going to try and extend him and and I don't think Tim Connolly would do this, but like trade Randle or Nas or Rudy and extend Collin Sexton. Like, I'm dubious about his long-term, how he ages and, the health and all that stuff. But in a vacuum, I like the fit. And if these are guys they're willing to trade anyway, and you could sub somebody else for Shannon, you could sub Leonard Miller for Shannon if you wanted to, but I actually think the Hornets would probably prefer Shannon. However you want to do it, you could kind of mix and match those contracts. The cleanest way is probably Dillingham, Shannon, and Conley. But you could do that for Sexton. I'm sure the Hornets will have other offers. Depends on how they value Dillingham, what they think about what they're going to do with Ball, and also if they like Shannon, who's obviously an older second-year guy. I think that's reasonable. And again, I like Sexton in a vacuum. Other guys that could be available that aren't perfect fits. Kelly Oubre, I don't think he's a good enough shooter, and he is expensive for what he is. $8 million. He's expiring a little over $8 million. And I also don't know that like the Sixers are in like an absolute rush to trade him. I'd say the same thing about Ochai Agbaji with the Raptors. He's a little over $6 million. A wing that improves, he's a good defender, sub league average shooter. Both Oubre and Agbaji are the same way, where they help you defensively, they help you athleticism wise, length wise, wreaking havoc wise. Like those things would be nice. I just worry about offensive efficiency and they wouldn't be asked to score with the Timberwolves, but if you're going to make the move, like, I don't know. I think there's other moves out there. They're just not quite perfect fits. A couple other guys that are expensive that I don't think they're going to make a move for, but are in that range and play positions the Wolves could need. TJ McConnell just signed an extension with the Pacers. Obviously, they're going nowhere fast this year, but he's got 3 years after this one on the deal at like $11 million or more. He's old, right? Like he's like mid-30s. That doesn't make sense. He's not a point guard of the future. Could he be the starting? Would he fit the Wolves well? Again, in a vacuum? Yeah. He's undersized, of course, but he would fit the Wolves in a vacuum. He's not a great three-point shooter, but he's really good in the mid-range, which obviously the Wolves are doing a little bit more of this year. I like the fit's actually okay, but the contract is not palatable. So I don't think McConnell's an option. Luke Kennard is a better option. He's obviously not really a point guard. He's more of a scoring guard. And he's a really good three-point shooter. I actually don't mind that fit. The Hawks have been a disappointment this year, so there's a possibility that they'd be willing to trade him. I don't mind the Kennard fit. I don't know, like from a salary standpoint, you're talking Dillingham plus, like it's probably Dillingham and Conley, or I think they would need somebody like Dillingham, like the upside of Dillingham. But again, I don't know that is really what the Hawks want. Conley's another expiring for them, which they wouldn't mind. Like you could do Conley in a second round pick, and that I think works money wise. They're within like $1 million of each other. I don't think they're trying to dump Kennard though, because he's also an expiring. So I think they'd want something of value, whether it's Dillingham or whatever. That's another name. That's a possibility. Guys that would be minor upgrades. Jalen Hardy with the Dallas Mavericks. He's making $6 million. He doesn't do a lot for me. He's another guy who does a few things well, but nothing great. It adds a little punch to the bench, a little bit more depth. I don't know that he's necessarily a lot better than what Bones Highland has given the Wolves, so I don't know that does much. Malachi Branham, a little bit more defensive-minded. He's just under $5 million, so you could do him also straight up for Dillingham, but I don't think that does a whole lot either, other than just give you some wing depth. Pat Connaughton, he's a depth piece on a team that like doesn't need him right now, and he's making a little over $9 million. So, again, going back to Charlotte, like I doubt it's like a bigger trade that involves Sexton and Pat Connaughton. Connaughton's only playing 7 minutes a game. Like last year from Milwaukee, he was injured a little bit, ended up playing 15 a game. It was his worst shooting year, but he's probably a league average or a little better shooter. Still can help you defensively. Again, a depth piece. Like I don't know that he dramatically improves your bench. So if you're shuffling contracts, like I don't know, I would be fine with acquiring Pat Connaughton. I just don't think it raises you that much. Guys who I think are going to have a little bit too much value, or you're going to have to give up too much because of either their contract or their upside. Max Christie, brother of former Gopher Cam Christie. I think you'd have to give up too much to get him. Nice player. I'd love to have him on the Wolves in a vacuum, but what are you giving up? Plus he's $7.7 million this year. And then 2 years beyond this one, not a bad contract for the Mavs, honestly. So I don't think they're like trying to trade Max Christie, but if they're selling guys off, could you jump in and get Max Christie as wing depth and trade Dillingham and Shannon and Conley and make that work? I don't know what that makes the books look like 2 years from now, but I just think they're not going to be able to get enough assets together to get Max Christie. Ty Jerome has been hurt this year. He's also got 3 years on the deal. I'd be surprised if Memphis pivoted to trade him already. He's probably part of whatever the next phase of the Grizzlies is. Another guy that's probably going to cost too much. And speaking of the Grizzlies, Scottie Pippen Jr., he's out another month at least, so I'd be really surprised if he gets moved. He's also on a bargain contract. Basically, I think it is a vet minimum for the next couple of years. I would actually add him to the best fits category. I should have talked about him in the group with Tre Jones and Ayo Dosunmo and Kobe White and Collin Sexton. Scottie Pippen Jr. would be a great fit for the Timberwolves. Tough, kind of hard-nosed, traditional point guard, good passer. I think and a good enough shooter from what we've seen. The track record's much shorter, much less in terms of historicals with Pippen, but I like the fit with Minnesota with Scottie Pippen as well. I just don't know that Memphis is going to have much of an appetite to trade him, but that's another name I'd consider. And then I mentioned Darius Garland earlier. I think he's far too expensive. The contract is prohibitive. It's like $40 million, like plus years after that. I just don't. I know it's a name the Wolves are apparently interested in. He looked bad when the Wolves played Cleveland recently, which isn't a reason to specifically to not trade for him. But I think the combination of injuries, contract, and just like, again, prohibitive in terms of matching that salary without making a crazy trade. I don't love that one as much. So all that to say, guys I'd put in the best fits category: Tre Jones, in no particular order. Tre Jones, Ayo Dosunmo. Tre is more of a point guard. Ayo Dosunmo is more of a DiVincenzo style combo-ish, but really more of a two guard. Collin Sexton, I really like if they can get enough assets together, but I don't really want to extend any of these guys, including Kobe White. Well, Tre Jones has a couple years on his deal, but Dosunmo would be a free agent. Kobe White would be a free agent, and Sexton would be a free agent. Scottie Pippen Jr. has a couple years, and he's injured right now, but that would be a move for the playoffs and for the next couple years. If you could pry him away from Memphis, I'd love it. And then several guys who I listed that I don't think are great fits for the Wolves, but names to keep an eye out for because of the salary range that the amount of money they make and what the positions the Wolves are looking for as well. All right, let's close by briefly talking All-Star and briefly talking Wolves Jazz tonight. We'll do all that here next to close out the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert did not file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, we got to talk All-Star. I'm going to try not to get too worked up about this, which is I shoved it toward the end of the show. Ant was not named an All-Star starter. By now, everybody's already gotten the rage tweets out, I'm sure. he should have been. He's a top 5 player in the Western Conference. The reason he didn't make it is because it's 50% fan vote that counts 25% NBA players and 25% coaches. Ant finished 7th in fan voting. He was 4th in player voting and 5th in media. So the players in media both thought he was a starter. Fans had Victor Wembanyama at 6 and Denny Avdia of the Portland Trailblazers at 5. A late push from Avdia voters. Ant, by the way, only lost to Wemby by 4,500 votes. So Wemby still was somehow 6th in the voting, and Ant was 7th. Avdia was 5th. And Avdia was behind Edwards up until this final vote. So a late push from Avdia, Blazers fans, Avdia fans from abroad, whatever, got him this push. And so Ant falls to 6th in the Western Conference. And even still, he was tied with Wemby based on the formula. But the tiebreaker is fan rank. So because Wemby was 1 slot ahead of Ant in the fan rank, he gets to start and Ant doesn't get to start. Avdia was the only guy that finished ahead of Ant that isn't a starter in fan voting, I should say. And by the way, Avdia was 10th in player rank and 9th in media rank. But he was 5th in fan rank. And so that pushes Ant out of the starting lineup. Now, it's along with Jokic, Doncic, SGA, Steph Curry, and Wembanyama. Hard to argue against any of them. I would put Ant ahead of Steph Curry. I think most folks nationally that did their all-star teams had Ant in there ahead of Curry. So I don't know. It is what it is. Overall, nobody's really tracking who's starting versus who's coming off the bench. It's like overall all-star nods that are what is on your basketball reference page. That's what people really care about. And, it'd be nice if he had been named a starter, and he should have been named a starter. All NBA is the one. I'll get pretty worked up about that if he ends up, somehow not. He'll at least be second team All NBA, but he really should be first team All NBA, especially like the games threshold, the 65 game threshold. We'll talk more about that when it becomes more clear. But like even now, like Jokic may not play in the All-Star game. I think he probably will, but it's borderline based on when he comes back from injury. And who knows? There's always a chance Ant could be named a starter for that reason, but he falls just outside the top 5. Karl-Anthony Towns, by the way, in the East, finished 7th overall. So just 2 spots outside of starting. So hard to get like too angry about it. It is a snub though. He should be a starter in the Western Conference. All right. Closing by talking Wolves Jazz. We've not seen the Utah Jazz since October, first week in November. There was a cup game against Utah. The Wolves won both of them by quite a bit. They won the first one actually only by 7. I'm sorry. The first one was the cup game. They won that one by 40. The second game they won by 7, which was not a cup game. And they were both within like 3 days of each other. I think the Wolves had a game in between, but it was like at Minnesota for the cup game and then at Utah. The Wolves won that one by 7. Utah is unabashedly tanking. Just look at some of the guys. Obviously, Walker Kessler's out for the year. That's like a serious injury. But they've got guys who just like Kyle Anderson and Kevin Love, both good players, both former Wolves, who'd be valuable players. Like talk about guys at the trade deadline that would be fringe improvements, bench improvements for anybody. Those guys are both really good, and they don't play, and they're not hurt. They don't play regularly, I should say. Like we've seen, Kevin Love started a few games. Let's see. He's played 23, started 4. Slow-Mo's played in 15 games. And the games that they play minutes. Slow-Mo's played 15 games, 20 minutes a game. And in the 23 games Love's played, he's played 17 plus minutes per game. And, both playing well as they do. But they're not playing regularly because it's the Jazz. Now, Utah's playing Monday night. I'm recording this before the Jazz play Monday. But Lauri Markkanen is not playing Monday due to an illness. And Georges Niang, who hasn't played all year, and the Jazz reacquired. He hasn't been on the Jazz in a few years, but he's back in Utah. He hasn't played all year. There's a chance he plays at some point very soon. I kind of doubt he plays against the Wolves Tuesday, but you never know. He might play. Markkanen is ill on Monday, so we'll see whether or not he plays Tuesday against Minnesota. He's obviously been great. And because of that, because of Markkanen and Keontae George, the Utah offense has actually been decent. It's been close to middle of the pack on cleaning the glass. The Jazz offense is 18th. Their differential is 28th, and their defense is by far the worst in the NBA, but the offense has been decent. They're 18th. They're 6th in free throw rate. They do get to the line a fair amount, and of course, a huge part of that is Keontae George and also Markkanen. Keontae George is averaging 7 free throw attempts per game, and he's 91% at the line. And then Markkanen is just under 7 free throw attempts a game at 88% at the line. So those guys, George is 24 a game, Markkanen's 28 a game, and they both shoot threes right around league average, 36.5% for Markkanen and 37% for George. So these guys are legit scorers. Now, beyond them, there's nobody else that's providing consistent offense. Like Jusuf Nurkic, when he plays, and he's been playing more recently, he's averaging a double-double, 10 and 10. And, Bryce Sensabaugh is their next leading scorer after Markkanen and George. So there's not a whole lot of other offense. Ace Bailey, the rookie, fun player. He hasn't had a great rookie year, not efficient, isn't scoring the ball that well. And, nobody on this team really has done much defensively. But he's a fun player to watch. Like, really, as long as the Wolves show up offensively in this game, don't turn the ball over a ton, which, shouldn't be a major issue. They're 26th in forcing turnovers, Utah is. But Utah gives up the worst, or I guess the opponent's best effective field goal percentage of any other defense in the league. They're a decent rebounding team, middle of the pack or better. They've got some decent bigs, as we talked about, like when Markkanen plays, he's a decent enough rebounder. Nurkic is obviously a good rebounder. Kyle Filipowski's showed some stuff as a bench big for them. So certainly a matchup the Timberwolves should win. And a lot to pay attention to when it comes to how the Timberwolves roll out their rotation, right? We don't know as of this recording if Naz is going to play, but calling up Enrique Freeman from the G League tells me there's a chance he's not available. Rudy hopefully can play, and undoubtedly he wants to play back in Salt Lake City. He did not play Saturday, so he'll have had 3 nights off since he played on Friday. And of course, Ant should be okay after playing Saturday, and then he gets 2 days off before Tuesday's game. So we'll of course have the live postcast following Wolves Jazz. It'll be, I think Luke and Jack will both be on the show tonight. You never know who's going to, occasionally Jack does it solo. He had our guy Kyle Tighe was on Friday, so that was fun. Like he's had kind of a rotating cast. Usually it's Luke and Jack still, but check it out live on YouTube after the game. And then if you missed that, you can listen to the audio right here at Locked On Wolves. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Of course, if you are a loyal listener to the show, go check out the Everydayer Club. It's built for you. Get Locked On Wolves ad-free, plus members-only Discord access, and more. Head to lockedonwolves.supercast.com to join the club. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.